Morning, guys. All right, so we are on book 16 of the Odyssey, Father and Son. So last week we read how um, Odysseus kind of escaped goddess Circe and got through the three monsters, the Siren, Scylla, and Charybdis. And then after that, they unfortunately came upon God Helios's very delicious, very immortal, very beloved cattle, and his crew, despite Odysseus telling them not to, decided to try and have a steak or a hamburger. So they were punished, and Odysseus was the only survivor, which brought him to goddess Calypso, where he was imprisoned for 7 years. Now, after those 7 years, Odysseus was released, and he washed up on the shores of King Alcinous's country. King Alcinous listens to Odysseus's story, which is how we hear what happened to Odysseus before goddess Calypso. Now, King Alcinous lets Odysseus go, helps him on his way, and now we are at the part of the story where Odysseus comes home at last. Book 16, Father and Son, the Homecoming. Now, in books 13 to 15, King Alcinous and his friends send Odysseus on his way home. Odysseus sleeps while the rowers bring him to Ithaca. When he awakens, he fails to recognize his homeland until Athena appears and tells him that he is indeed home. She disguises Odysseus as an old man so no one will recognize him, so that he can surprise the suitors, and then she urges him to visit his faithful swineherd, Eumaeus. The swineherd welcomes the disguised Odysseus and tells him about what has been happening in Odysseus's home. Athena goes to Telemachus and tells him to return home. She warns him of the suitors' plot to kill him and advises him to stay with the swineherd for a night. Telemachus does as she bids, and so unbeknownst to Telemachus, he goes to the swineherd, and his father is there. Not that Telemachus recognizes him. Remember, Odysseus is disguised. No one knows it's him. But there were two men in the mountain hut, Odysseus and the swineherd. At first light, blowing their fire up, they cooked their breakfast and sent their lads out, driving herds to root in the tall timber. When Telemachus came, the wolfish troop of watchdogs only fawned on him as he advanced. Odysseus heard them go and heard the light crunch of a man's footfall, at which he turned quickly to say, "Eumaeus, here is one of your crew come back, or maybe another friend. The dogs are out there snuffling belly down. Not one has even growled. I can hear footsteps." But before he finished, his tall son stood at the door. The swineherd rose in surprise, letting a bowl and jug tumble from his fingers. Going forward, he kissed the young man's head, his shining eyes in both hands, while his own tears brimmed and fell. Think of a man whose dear and only son, born to him in exile, reared with labor, had lived 10 years abroad and now returns. How would that man embrace his son? Just so the herdsman clapped his arms around Telemachus and covered him with kisses, for he knew the lad had got away from death. He said, "Light of my days, Telemachus, you made it back. When you took ship for Pylos, I never thought to see you here again. Come in, dear child, and let me feast my eyes. Here you are, home from distant places. How rarely, anyway, you visit us, your own men and your own woods and pastures. Always in the town. A man would think you loved the suitors' company, those dogs." Telemachus, with his clear candor, said, "I am with you, uncle. See, now I have come because I wanted to see you first, to hear from you if mother stayed at home. Or is she married off to someone and Odysseus's bed left empty for some gloomy spider's weaving?" Gently, the forester replied to this. At home indeed your mother is, poor lady, still in the woman's hall. Her nights and days are wearied out with grieving. Stepping back, he took the bronze-shod lance, and the young prince entered the cabin over the worn doorstone. Odysseus moved aside, yielding his couch, but from across the room Telemachus checked him. Friend, sit down. We'll find another chair in our own hut. Here is the man to make one. The swineherd, when when the quiet man sank down, built a new pile of evergreens and fleeces, a couch for the dear son of great Odysseus, then gave them trenchers of good meat, left over from the roast pork of yesterday, and heaped up willow baskets full of bread, and mixed an ivy bowl of honey-hearted wine. Then he in turn sat down facing Odysseus. Their hands went out upon the meat and drink as they fell to, ridding themselves of hunger. Now Telemachus then sends the swineherd to let his mother know he has returned safely, and Athena appears and urges Odysseus to let Telemachus know who he really is. Saying no more, she tipped her golden wand upon the man, making his cloak pure white and the knit tunic fresh around him. Lithe and young she made him, ruddy with sun, his jawline clean, the beard no longer grew upon his chin, and she withdrew when she had done. Then Lord Odysseus reappeared, and his son was thunderstruck. Fear in his eyes, he looked down and away as though it were a god and whispered, Stranger, you are no longer what you were just now. Your cloak is new, even your skin. You are one of the gods who rule the sweep of heaven. Be kind to us. We'll make you fair oblation and give gifts of hammered gold. Have mercy on us. The noble and endearing man replied, No, God, why take me for a god? No, I am the father whom your boyhood lacked and suffered pain for lack of me. I am he. Held back too long, the tears ran down his cheeks, and he embraced his son. Only Telemachus, uncomprehending, wild with incredulity, cried out, You cannot be my father, Odysseus. Meddling spirits conceived this trick to twist the knife in me. No man of woman born could work these wonders by his own craft, unless a god came into it with ease to turn him young or old at will. I swear you were in rags and old, and here you stand like one of the immortals. Odysseus brought his ranging mind to bear and said, This is not princely, to be swept away by wonder at your father's presence. No other Odysseus will ever come, for he and I are one, the same. His bitter fortune and his wanderings are mine. 20 years gone, and I am back again on my own land. Then throwing his arms around this marvel of a father, Telemachus began to weep. Salt tears rose from the wells of longing in both men, and cries burst from both as keen and fluttering as those of great-taloned hawk, whose nestlings farmers take before they fly. So helplessly they cried, pouring out tears, and might have gone on weeping so till sundown. Telemachus lets Odysseus know that they face more than 100 suitors. Odysseus tells Telemachus to return home. He will follow, still disguised as an old man, and Telemachus must pretend not to know him. He must also lock away Odysseus's weapon and armor. So now only Telemachus knows who Odysseus is. The swineherd still does not know. The swineherd still thinks Odysseus is just some old man. Now we get to book 17, the beggar at the manor. So Odysseus is going to pretend to be some kind of beggar and kind of test their hospitality. It gets a little sad for me anyway. Telemachus returns home, and Odysseus and the swineherd soon follow. Odysseus is still disguised as a beggar. While he spoke, an old hound lying near pricked up his ears and lifted up his muzzle. This was Argos, trained as a puppy by Odysseus, but never taken on a hunt before his master sailed for Troy. The young men afterward hunted wild goats with him, and hare and deer, but he had grown old in his master's absence. Treated as rubbish now, he lay at last upon a mass of dung before the gates, manure of mules and cows, piled there until field hands could spread it on the king's estate, abandoned there, and half destroyed with flies, old Argos lay. But when he knew he heard Odysseus's voice nearby, he did his best to wag his tail, nose down with flattened ears, having no strength to move nearer his master. And the man looked away, wiping a salt tear from his cheek, but he hid this from Eumaeus. Then he said, I marvel that they leave this hound to lie here on the dung pile. He would have been a fine dog from the look of him, though I can't say as to his power and speed when he was young. You find the same good build in house dogs, table dogs, landowners, keep all for style. And you replied, Eumaeus, a hunter owned him, but the man is dead in some far place. If this old hound could show the form he had when Lord Odysseus left him going to Troy, you'd see him swift and strong. He never shrank from any savage thing he'd brought to bay in the deep woods. On the scent, no other dog kept up with him. Now misery has him in leash. His owner died abroad, and here the woman slaves will take no care of him. You know how servants are. Without a master, they have no will to labor or excel. For Zeus, who views the wide world, takes away half the manhood of a man. That day he goes into captivity and slavery. Eumaeus crossed the court and went straight forward into the Megaron among the suitors. But death and darkness in that instant closed the eyes of Argos, who had seen his master, Odysseus, after 20 years. Odysseus then enters his home as a beggar, and the suitors mock and abuse him. Penelope asks to speak with the beggar, but Odysseus puts her off until nightfall. So that is book 17, Beggar at the Manor. So his dog, he kind of raised as a puppy and then had to leave for the war, is really old now that he's come home, and he's not being very well taken care of. But even through the disguise, Argos recognized Odysseus, and now that he knows that Odysseus is home, he was able to rest. He was being this guard dog. His spirit was holding on, but now that he knows his master's home, he could let go. And so he dies as soon as he recognizes Odysseus, and Odysseus walks into the house. Argos passes away. So that was book 16 and book 17, and Odysseus is home. Better watch out.